Welcome, 16-bit hockey fans, to yet another edition of the NHL 94 podcast. It's been a little while since I had a sit down like this to chat with one of the people out there that makes the community oh so great. And today, well, I have somebody, Kidswasted, is going to be joining me. We'll be chatting about NHL 94 and about a few other things that I'll be learning. But with that being said, Kidswasted, how are you, buddy?
Doing well. It's Friday night, done working for the week. Finally not going to a wedding. I don't know if you've seen the Discord chats. I've been past 2 weekends I haven't really been available for league games because I've been at weddings in Minnesota on 4th of July weekend. And then we drove out 6 hours out into the state of New York, basically in the middle of nowhere for my wife's cousin's wedding. So finally home for the weekend. Maybe I can get some more games in this weekend.
Maybe after this, you and I could have a couple of we've played recently, haven't we?
Yeah, I think it was the Superliga. You had Montreal and Patrick Roy. He was like the stone wall, like the brick wall. And I was
so
Quebec.
Good.
I was Quebec, and we had Duchesne, Steve Duchesne. He just like a felon. I don't know if he slept with the ref's wife or something, but he's just always in the box. So I just got to put Gusarov and Leschyshyn, or however you pronounce his last name.
Lecision. Yeah. I remember him playing back in the days. I'm old enough to have watched him play live, or not live, at least on TV. Mm-hmm. I don't know what happened. I mean, just curious, who won that series? Was it the Habs that came out on top? Yeah. So it's not due to my skill.
Me out of the playoffs. I think we split the league, the season series, but then you knocked me out. Was it a 5 or 7 game series?
I can't remember. I've been playing quite a bit, but it's not due to skill. It's due to the fact that I had Patrick Roy. The man is in the Genesis side of things.
No, you played well. You played well.
I put the light guys out there. I take advantage of the weight bug.
Oh yeah, that killed me. It's
my style. That's my style. But either way, I want to know more about you. First off, Kidswasted, the name. What's the history of this?
So it's kind of like a family type of thing. I've asked my brothers. I get 2 brothers, and we kind of forget where it stemmed from. But basically, it's like the equivalent of like shaking my head. So it's like if someone does something stupid, you just go Kidswasted, type of thing. Like you're shaking your head, like, oh, that was so stupid. Like, so that's really all it is. When I poked my head into the forums a few years ago, probably like 9 years ago at this point, just to download like updated ROMs with like rosters, and they had you register on the site, and I couldn't think of a name. Being a Bruins fan, I came up with Bergie, like Bergeron, Bergie and Fries, and then I totally forgot about that. And then when COVID hit, I don't know what it was. There was some kind of email I got, like Eventbrite or something, saying that this there was a social distancing NHL tournament. So I got all excited, and then I'm like, oh, I do have a name, a username with the site. I'm like Bergie and Fries. I'm like, I don't know. I'm going to change it because like my Xbox name is Kidswasted now. So I changed that. I asked Chaos before I really even knew him, but I was like, I knew he was an admin. He's like, you only get one change. And he's like, are you sure you want to change it? I'm like, yeah. So ever since then, I've been Kidswasted.
So you've been on at least the forums for a number of years. So with that, I mean, let's go far back. I want to talk about your NHL 94 journey, how you stumbled upon it, or, by circumstance or destiny, how you came upon it.
Sure. So my cousin Ricky, he's a year older than me. Him and his dad, my Uncle Rick, they always had the latest video game system. Like probably every Sega other than Master System, the first one, they had the Genesis 1, 2, Sega CD, like all of those, the 32X, Saturn, like all that, Dreamcast, all the way up. So, and then PlayStation on top of that, Nintendo 64, NES, SNES. It's like, I don't know why, but they always had all the video game systems. And I think partly because my uncle, he's a video game nerd too, or used to be. But anyways, they had NHL hockey. And I remember my uncle and my older brother, who's 5 years older, they were playing, I think, one time. And I just remember hearing the intro, and that it was kind of like Road Rash, right? So Electronic Arts, they also did Road Rash games, and it's just like that guitar, and I'm just like, oh, this is awesome. What is this game? And we were huge, and this was back when the Bruins were pretty good, right? We went to the 88 and 90 Stanley Cup final against the Oilers. The first one I think was with Gretzky, and then the 91 was without.
Correct.
So they were like still good. Like Neely was pretty good. You know, we didn't even have Oates at that time. We had Craig Janey, you know, Bob Sweeney, Don Sweeney, Bork, all those guys, Glenn Wesley, all those guys. And so the Bruins were still good. The Celtics were kind of dwindling down, but my dad, all my uncles, they were really, you know, Larry Bird and this, that, and Ray Bork. And, you know, I grew up watching Bobby Orr like back in the 70s. It's like, okay. So we were like, my immediate family, we're like probably Bruin hockey, we call it, is like our that's our number one sport. You know, Patriots, you know, have been good to us, right? So many championships. But, you know, the Celtics and all that. But anyways, so we've always liked hockey. We've loved playing street hockey, you know, growing up in old tennis courts or wherever in New England, pond hockey, things like that in the winter. But my uncle got that NHL game, and it was like, I was like, whoa, because before that we had ice hockey, right? We had the small, medium, and, you know, large guys, and then blades of steel, which the 8-bit, we could never figure out what the audio was saying. So we'd always make stuff up. I can't remember stuff at the top of my head, and stuff is probably not PC. I won't share, but some of my uncles were just like saying weird stuff. But
it's a gets the pass or something like that. So I remember when
it makes the
something
pass,
like
gets
that.
the pass. Yeah, something
Yeah,
like that.
I still can't make it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that's what we had. And then all of a sudden seeing NHL hockey 92, and just the way all the players are gliding, and then you can get in fights all the time. It was just awesome. And then my older brother, he got a Sega Genesis, Model 1, I think it was. And I don't know how he got it. It was a birthday, Christmas. I don't know what it was. But he got it, and we had NHLPA 93. And that, to this day, is probably a top 5 or maybe even top 3 video game I've ever played. And that was the Sega Genesis version. I loved it. The only thing is, you know, there wasn't manual goalie, things like that, but, you know, we would try to play better defense and just not give up breakaways, because, you know, that pass, you go to the right and then just kind of flick it off into the left. Yep. You know, we actually did a 93 league was a year ago. I think it was like last summer. We just randomly did a 93 league, and it was a one and done. It was almost.
Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah,
it was fun.
Good effort, at least.
It was fun, but, you know, but yeah. So then my older brother he bought himself, like, back in the day we had Funko Land, which was like it was a store like before GameStop and EB Games, or Electronic Boutique. But he got a Super Nintendo, Donkey Kong Country, and all that. And that was like his. So he had like both consoles, and big brother, don't touch my stuff, you're gonna break it. And then so he got, I don't know how he got it, but he had NHL 94 for Super Nintendo. So I played that a ton, like when he was at track practice or whatever. He, to this day, I bring it up. He's like, I always knew when you were touching my stuff. But then I don't know if it was Christmas 94 or 95, something around there. My parents gave me Aladdin for Sega Genesis, right? And I was like, oh, this is awesome, but like, how can I play it? Yeah. I don't have a console. Like Sean, my brother Sean, he had both consoles. And all of a sudden my parents just look at Sean and they go, yeah, you're going to have to give up your Sega Genesis to Christopher. You know, Chris, my name. So he was like, what? And they're like, you have a Super Nintendo. You don't need both. And the Super Nintendo was, I think it was 2 years younger.
Yeah, came out like in 91-ish, and
so
89 was when the Genesis came out.
In my parents' eyes, they were like, yeah, you're getting the old system or console, even though it was the same generation. But so then I was all excited, so I was playing Aladdin. But then I acquired all of my brother's games, NHLPA 93 being one of them, and I played that all the time. Even like through high school, parts of college, I was still playing that. And then I would also play NHL 94. Somewhere along the lines, I don't know if my brother in high school was too cool for, you know, Super Nintendo or college, but he left it behind. And then I would play my younger cousins all the time. And we would just play NHL 94, Super Nintendo. Sometimes we play '93 Sega Genesis. We just kind of flip-flopped between the two. For some reason, I don't think I ever played '94 Sega outside of a couple times with the roster updates from like 8 or 9 years ago until COVID.
Mhm.
So to me, it was, in my mind, it felt the same as '93, but I was not used to one-timers. I was not used to manual goalie. So that was like, a punch to the face, really. And that's like, I was far behind a lot of these guys in the community because I wasn't used to that. So all my goals were like one-on-ones or just, trying to deke goalies. I didn't really know about the cross crease slapper. It was really just like breakaways and just finding a way to get to the net. But yeah, it was funny because my best friend growing up, him and his brother next door had the same thing. They had '93 Sega, they had '94 Super Nintendo, so we always played that even in high school. And they had '95 Sega, so they didn't really play '93 as much anymore. But '94, their dad would sometimes play with us on Super Nintendo. But then '95, they were all '95 Sega guys. And every
What?
time I went over there, I'm like, oh, I don't want to play this. This game sucks. Like, it's just so different. Like, it was just so different. It's not a bad
Yeah.
game. It's just so different. Like, I
Mhm.
love '93 for Sega, and then '95 was just such a big difference. But it's so funny because like we had '93 Sega, '94 Super Nintendo, and so did my next door neighbors. So we going over each other's houses, we would always just play one or the other. But that's my NHL thing. I think we never owned '95 or anything really else. '96, some friends had on Super Nintendo, was okay. I think that was the one with like 2 Unlimited, had some songs on there. They were like a '90s, I don't know, techno electronic band or something. But then we had NHL '99 on N64, and that was fun. The announcers were crazy. They'd be like "Freight Train, woo," and just like
I
all
never
kinds of
played
weird.
it.
It's just weird stuff. But and then took a break, and then off and on throughout the years, I've played the new ones, and they're okay, but it's too much of a simulation. It's like you
Yeah.
got to think, and now you have like player types, and it's just like I miss the days where it's just you figure out the attributes and like, oh, okay, this skater feels faster. Okay, this skater has a bigger slap shot or a more accurate slap shot. So I
So
always go
you
back to the old ones.
you played, like, I'm gonna go way back. So you mentioned you touched on ice hockey for the NES and also Blades of Steel. Did you play anything even prior to that? Because Atari had ice hockey, so you
No,
never tried that. The 2600. That's actually an interesting game. It's still kind of fun to this day. Very primitive. You're talking one button. That iconic joystick from
yeah.
Atari. But yeah, but either way, I was just
The
wondering if you
only
played that.
the first system we had was NES. So we had NES, Mario, ice hockey, like the tennis, the kung fu. Kung fu was to this
Oh
day probably a
yeah.
top 10 favorite game.
You ever finish it?
Yeah, oh yeah, yep.
There's
That and
5 levels, I think.
I think so, yeah. And then Ninja Gaiden was another one.
Oh, I don't know how. Did you ever finish that? Because that's
I
notoriously
did
hard.
in college. No cheats, nothing.
Good for
I'm
you.
actually playing a game right now called The Messenger. It's kind of like a Ninja Gaiden clone on Switch, Xbox, PlayStation, I think Steam. It's just like Ninja Gaiden, but it's a little. You get more things that you can do, like this, like kind of grapple hook and like a double jump type thing. It's pretty cool.
Ninja Gaiden. So I always hear it. Ninja Gaiden, Ninja Gaiden. Those are the two
I
different
have
ways you
no
pronounce it.
idea.
And the same here, man.
I'm
So
still learning a lot of these NHL '94 players, like Lecision. Like I was
Decision,
calling
yeah.
like Steve Chiasson. I Chazon.
Steve Chason.
Yeah. I would call him Chiasson because that's just what I'm reading. Growing up, I don't know any
Yeah.
better.
Rest in peace, by the way. I
Yeah.
believe he's
Yep.
yeah. So then I'm curious, and you are sounds like a huge fan of NHLPA 93 and Genesis, and obviously a huge fan of NHL 94 on the SNES. If you had to pick one of the two, which is your favorite?
Oh man, it's like Sophie's Choice. Um,
You can go neither. I mean, you could say that you like them both the same, but I'm curious if you just have one over the other. Like you just have to find
there's
one.
pros and cons to both, and
Mm-hmm.
I like them for different reasons. I like '94 Super Nintendo because it's just arcade style. You just pick it up and play. Like now knowing '93, '94, and maybe even '92, I don't know. But you have the weight bug, so it's like you had Ray Bork and Cam Neely back in the day, and they couldn't check, and we couldn't figure out why. We're like, and then like Theo Fleury comes down and knocks us on our ass, like my little brother. And I'm like, but he doesn't have a clue. He's just like, I don't know. I picked the Flames. They sounded cool. So, yeah.
Did you find about the weight bug like along your journey, or did it come like as you went through the forums? Or
In the forums.
yeah,
Yep. I had no idea.
Yeah.
And all those hours I put in, I never put 2 and 2 together.
Yeah, no, I'm the same way. So, okay, now I want to go back. Did you ever even touch on NHLPA 93 on the SNES? Because that was a unique game on its own. It choppy, still a fun game. Like I'm not going to trash it all that much, but it had its. I mean, it did have its issues. But
so when
even after all these years, you never tried to ROM out and give it a shot.
I did try it a couple of years ago, but I know like when FuncoLand was like liquidating all the Super Nintendo, like the 16-bit games, and even like 8-bit games when they were going to 64 and PlayStation, and then eventually PlayStation 1 and 2, they'd have this little bin, and there was like 100 copies of NHLPA 93 and Super Nintendo.
Nobody wanted it.
So exactly. So that just tells you something right there. And it's just like, so I don't think I ever tried it. We might have rented it from Blockbuster like years ago, but I don't remember it. And I just kind of went with what my older brother was into. So if he said it was garbage, that's usually the case. So
yeah. Well, then how did you come across the forums and eventually the Discord?
I don't know. I think it was late college or just out of college. And I really don't know. I think I might have just been playing like 94 Super Nintendo or something. And I think I was like, I wonder if there's any like, because I think I was downloading ROMs or something for like a Raspberry Pi. And I was like, oh, maybe they have roster updates. And then I came to the forums, and it was like very heavy, and it still is very heavy on the Sega side, because just the Super Nintendo is very limited, with like graphics being compressed and things like that. So we're still trying to figure that out. Big Marcus, shout out to him. He's doing a lot of stuff, dissecting the Super Nintendo side, because Sega side just has a lot more love. It's a fun game. A lot more people play it, as you've seen in the community. When we're getting a lot more like, new members, I would say 80 or 90% of those are going to Sega. Some of them are both, but for some reason, again, shout out to AAA. Somehow he just gets these Super Nintendo guys over to us all the time. Some stick, some don't. We never hear from him again, but whatever.
You know what? I've been throwing up the request for an exhibition match and I always say at least the last few days, maybe last week or two, I've been asking for either console. Nobody bites on the SNES. I want to try it. I want to play more on the SNES side of things. I'm going to get absolutely wrecked. Like if you and I sit down and have a game, I would struggle to keep you under 10 goals. And I think if I did that, that would be an absolute win on my part. But nobody wants to play me, so I can't sharpen those skills. And
so it's funny you say that. It's sorry. It's like a little delay. I don't mean to interrupt you.
No worries.
It's funny you say that, because this summer, for some reason, Super Nintendo is like all crickets. I have this Dynasty League where I made a ROM using the rosters from 92, 93, all the way up through 2000. I was able to get some CSVs from the 99, 2000 games through Google. I basically put those into the 94 kind of shell like ROM, one for each year. So I have this Dynasty League where we pick one franchise from 92 to 2000. You can't change your teams. So right now, I think we're wrapping up. We're in the playoffs for 97. And it's just, there's like nobody, like myself included, I've just been very busy. Just for some reason this summer, Super Nintendo is just so quiet. And like Big Marcus even said the same thing. He's like trying to get a league up with some of his ROM hacks. So 1 minute penalties, which has been a huge breakthrough, because I know Chaos Draft League has the 1 minute penalties, and it's huge, especially with the number of interference penalties called in Super Nintendo. Like you're just kind of casually skating by the goalie. The goalie comes out, knocks you on your ass, and then you get called for interference. So he's come up with a ROM hack to disable that goalie interference.
Oh.
So the goalie still takes you out, but there's no penalty.
Mhm.
And then he has 1 minute penalties, and then he's got this hack where there's so many. It's known in Super Nintendo you hit so many posts because you're always manually
Yes.
aiming. Even one time as you're manually aiming. Where Sega,
Yep.
it's like the net's like a vacuum. So he has this hack where I think if it hits either the left or right post, it counts as a goal now. So he wants to test this out with like kind of like a classic style where we're just using the classic ROM, but with these hacks applied. So 1 minute penalty, no goalie interference, and hits the left or right post is a goal. So it's just going to be like a 20 game quick season. I think a dozen of us we're going to play that. But yeah, usually late June we have the Super Nintendo Draft League, which is my favorite league. Chaos Draft League is probably my second favorite. Just I love drafting the players. That's like I think 60 to 75% of the fun, and then playing the game is I don't know why. I just like fantasy drafting, like hockey, football. I love drafting. It's just fun. You build your fantasy team, right? But that for
I was
some
curious,
reason,
what type of team do you tend to build? Like, what's your strategy when you go through these without giving up too much of your
sure. So
team-wide?
I used for Super Nintendo, anyways. I used to draft heavy guys, but I feel like it doesn't really matter.
UA Krupp. Do you draft UA Krupp?
I don't think I did. No, I wouldn't go. No, I wouldn't go that big.
All
No,
right.
yeah, he's huge, but
He is.
but I like to get agile guys. So like Peter Klima, Gartner, any of those guys. I also like to find a sniper in the middle, whether it's Turgeon, even Dino Ciccarelli. Again, Klima could be my centerman. In fact, I just had a really good it was the winter Super Nintendo Draft League. I had Klima as my center, and he just like set some records for like I think he was like top 5 or something, or top 10 or something. And
How
like
about
most
Riche? Would
points.
you put him in the center? Is he one of your guys you'd stick in there?
Stefan Riche?
Yes, the
Yeah,
Devils dude.
I haven't really like delved into the Devils. I haven't really played with those guys too much, like Stastny, and I know a lot of guys like him. And then Riche, and then who's the other guy? Oh, Zalepukin.
Zelepukin.
Zelepukin, yeah. And then like I don't know the names. Like I read the text and I just come up with my own
Steamac, Claude
pronunciation.
Lemieux.
Claude Lemieux. That's the guy I was thinking of.
Stastny. Did you mention Stastny?
Stastny, yep.
Yeah.
It's funny, like guys like that are like in the game, like Goulet, Stastny. I think
Bernie Nichols too, I think, is on that team, or am I wrong?
He might be.
But
I know, like, I think it was 92 or 93. Guy Lafleur was in it. I think it was 92. He was on the Nordiques.
Yeah, this was last year,
Yeah.
I think, in the league.
Yeah. So that like just like weird stuff like that. Oh, and was it Ron Langway? He might have been on the Kings.
Defenseman for the Capitals with no helmet.
Washington, yeah. So he's in 94. He's terrible because it's the end of his career, but he's in the game. So it's just weird.
Brad Marsh is in the game.
Yeah. Yep.
And I think the Senators, and yeah.
I think you're right.
The roster, yeah, it's fun to watch because if you watched hockey at that time, it's definitely like it just shows you, like, it's.
The 90s were the most exciting time to watch hockey because everyone's numbers were just astronomical. And then you had great goalies. We had some of the best goalies of all time, like Roy, Hasek, Brodeur, all those guys.
Yeah.
I have a question for you.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw it out.
Who would you take out of just these three? I'm not saying these three are the best. Brodeur, Roy, Hasek.
You're talking in real?
Just real life. If you were like building a franchise and money was not an option, you had to take one of those three.
I'm going with Patrick Roy.
Okay.
And the reason why, I think that he's the only goalie to have won a Stanley Cup in 3 different decades.
Yeah, was it 86, 93, and 01? Or 96 and 01? So he's got 4, right? In 3 decades?
He might have a 4th, but I know he's the only one that won in 3 different decades. And so he was able to transcend both the 80s the high flying 80s hockey, and
Mm-hmm.
then even into the 90s, a clutch and grab, and then it still kind of was in the early 2000s. And he carried the Habs in 1993. And without him, they had no business being anywhere there. But
They
he
were
was
good
able to,
players, but no one was really great.
right, like Kirk Muller and Vincent Domfus, and like Desjardins kept scoring goals like crazy, like as a defenseman. But
Yes, that was wild.
and
I couldn't believe that.
Hasek is amazing, but Hasek's durability, I question. He always seemed to have injury problems, especially later in his career.
He
And
also
so
got
that's why I
started
wouldn't
like
pick him.
27 or 28 or something like that when he finally got his chance. Like,
Yeah, that's a shame. I mean, he was
yeah,
behind Belfour for a while, then he was behind Grant Fuhr until Grant Fuhr got traded to LA. So, and it's not to say Brodeur, the record for shutouts and wins, I believe, it's a good luck topping that.
he was a. So I would say Brodeur. I think he's a workhorse. I think he's a
Yeah.
great goaltender, but and it's not all about stats, right? But when I was doing stat research on Hockey Reference for my all-time roster, I found out I think Brodeur never led the league in save percentage ever.
But he's always very good at like the low
He's
200s,
up
like
there.
low 900s.
He's up there. Yeah. So, but I found that very interesting, and I'm like, wow. So he led in wins like all the time because he was a workhorse. He played 89% of the season, where other teams were doing 60-40 or 75-25 something. He played a lot and he had a lot, so therefore he has more chances at shutouts. He had Stevens and Niedermeyer,
Danico,
among others.
Driver, good defense.
They even had defensive forwards, so it's he was a great goaltender. I do not take that away from him, but in those three, I feel like there's no wrong answer between Hasek and Noir.
You know what? He didn't mention Grant Fuhr, and I'm a big fan for Grant Fuhr. In the first year that he played in St. Louis, if you look at his statistics, he started every game until he hurt his knee in one of the last games of the regular season, then came back. So I think he started like 78 or 79 games. He was going to start every game, but he just tweaked his knee, and then he came back for the playoffs, and then Kyprios fell. I'm using the air quotes. And tore his knee up, and then they had to start Casey for the rest of it. But he was going to be the only goalie to start 80-something games.
Wow.
That guy, a workhorse, Grant Fuhr, loved him, man. He was.
I had nothing against
stud.
him. I just don't remember too much about him, like watching him. We don't have it like we have today, like where it's like NHL center ice and all that coverage. So it's like we were really like the Adams division growing up. It was
the old Adams,
just Bruins and whoever they're playing.
Curiously, you ever play the PC version of 94? It's totally different, but a lot of people like it.
I did. I actually like it. It's kind of like Super Nintendo, but I don't know if it's like a little slower or something, but it's still a lot of fun. And I love like the intro, and there's just like a little bit more that you can do within the game. And I really enjoyed it, but I have it on my PC that I play NHL with. In like the online leagues and stuff, but sometimes I just forget it's there, but I should play that more.
Do you think there's ever going to be enough of a community surrounding that to play online? I'm wondering if there's even a possibility to play it online. There's got to be some hack to like figure it out.
At this point, I would say no. I feel like it would have already been a thing. I know people have asked for leagues, maybe even myself being one of them years ago, but having like a Sega CD online league. But really, it's almost the same game. There's just like a better audio thing. Like better.
Somebody's got to bring
audio.
like an old like tower type computer to the Kingdom 94 tournament and like those big CRT VGA or SVGA monitors.
We're all playing a little tournament in the corner.
Yeah, why not? So, but anyways, NHL Rewind. You said you have an Xbox. I'm almost positive you played Rewind, and if so, what are your thoughts on it?
Sorry, that flies keep
no worries.
My face. Yes, so Xbox Rewind. I played it. It's like the Sega version. One thing that always bothers me with that is it's like an audio delay. So if you check someone, it'll be like 1.5 seconds after, and you hear or whatever.
Is that a result of the CRT monitor? Whatever monitors we use, we're not using CRTs.
I think Smazoma. He said it's like a known thing with that emulator that they used.
Oh.
Yeah,
we have to get on them to.
But it was fun.
It.
It was fun. I really enjoyed it. I think I bought it for like $5 or $10, whatever it was when it came out, because I had NHL 21, and you need to have the game at first in order to get Rewind. But then that was like late October around Halloween, and then I think December they just, I don't know, EA Sports was just like, the hell with it. You don't have to have NHL 21 to buy it. And then we didn't have we couldn't play, but I know Halifax, he got some kind of PS4 share play or whatever it was called. I'm not familiar with the name, but he was able to play some guys in the community in the Rewind.
I would love to do a deep dive into that, because I've done for the SNES and the Genesis in terms of building lines. I still want to do something similar for the Rewind community, but nothing has materialized as of yet. So stay tuned.
It was big for a little bit, and then it just kind of died off because we have other ROMs, roster updates and stuff.
But we're kind of, I mean, I'm much older than you, but at least we're closer to the in terms of vintage than, say, somebody that's going to pick up an Xbox and want to play, knowing the players from now, like Connor McDavid and stuff like that. I mean, they don't understand who the heck is Cam Neely. Great player, by the way. He scored 50 goals in 50 games on one knee. Twice. But still, people, and giving kudos to the old Boston players, right? So now I want to, because you're more so in the SNES community, but you play quite a bit in the Genesis side of things. Genesis players, are they more salty in general?
100%.
You should see, like, I'm going to go on a little bit of rant here. Sometimes when I play, I get back messages salty as can be. The people out there that are doing it, I know who you are. I know you know what I'm talking about. So keep on being salty. I don't care if I win or lose.
Yeah,
you guys certainly do. But
it's wild. And another thing I kind of want to add to that is, I think for some reason, a lot of the Super Nintendo 94 guys are Canadian. And I just feel, and I know it's very stereotypical, but I feel like Canadians are nicer. And I think more Sega players are Americans, and we're just like feistier. I could be feisty too, but I have sportsmanship. Like, it's a game. First of all, it's a game. It's a game. Thanks for playing. I'm very happy that I was able to play someone, because I was playing the computer for 20 years in my house, So
the funny thing is, like I play tennis quite a bit in real life. And like I say, like we have matches, I'm in ladder matches and all this thing. Every time I play somebody, and that same thing applies with when I play at 94, my life is not going to change if I win or lose. Tomorrow, it's not Wimbledon for me. This isn't the Stanley Cup Finals. Like, nothing changes. But some people, they get so salty, for God's sakes. Like, but that's one thing I really like. I want to dive deep into the SNES community just to experience it more. I'm trying to, play some more. Trying to play any games, and nobody's listening to me. I throw my exhibition requests.
I think the fall is going to be a lot better. I think people will start coming back from vacations and things like that. For some reason, it's just been very quiet. I know myself. This is the first weekend I've been home in like 6 weekends. So I've only been playing games on weeknights. Or even weekdays when like slow days at work or something. I mean, I didn't say that.
Well, I think even us, we probably had some difficulty trying to schedule a match between it, because my schedule is tight as it is, and yours obviously first weekend back for what? So yeah, man, this is it's summertime. Especially in the northeast part of the country or the continent. The summer is so short. We're enjoying it as much as possible. But
a lot of guys have like the 5 to 8 p.m. Eastern like availability, and that's like a no-fly zone for me, because the kids are coming home. I got a 5-year-old and a 1-year-old, and it's just like all hands on deck, playing with them, getting dinner ready, the baths, bedtime, all that. So it's like I can never play during that time. So I'm like, all these guys reaching out there, I don't know if they're bachelors or they don't have kids or they don't have, young kids anymore. So they have that availability as soon as they get out of work. And unfortunately, I don't have that.
You give it a few years and
you'll be in a
position. Yeah. So exactly. You're not quite there.
Because they just cling on to me when I try to play like on a Saturday afternoon. My older son just hangs on my arm like as I'm playing, and I'm like, I can't do this.
Oh, enjoy those days. They're not going to be there for
No, I know. Yeah, definitely. Yep.
Do they play it, or do they want to play it? Have you tried showing them the?
I've played a couple of other 16-bit games. I think Goof Troop on Super Nintendo. It's like a 2-player puzzle game. I've done the original Ninja Turtles. Well, not the original, but the arcade original on NES. I've done Turtles in Time with my son. And then we did that new one, Shredder's Revenge, that was on all the new consoles. And we beat that, and he was like loving it.
That's a good. I remember the arcade one was so much fun, and the one on the SNES, the Turtles in Time, was so hard to play.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah,
it was
we
a
just have
challenging
like a
game.
Ziploc bag of quarters that my family would save like for an entire year, and it would be gone in like 2 hours just on that one game.
Between that and like the Simpsons arcade game was another one, and
X-Men
then
was another one.
and for us, I mean, maybe a little early for you, but WrestleFest we used to play a ton of.
Yes,
Much.
that was a
Oh
fun
my God.
game.
Yeah. But anyways, going back to 94, crease cuts, are those cheap or not?
If it's in the game, it's in the game. Honestly, like seriously, there are some cheap things. I think there was something, was it on a breakaway or something? And if you flip it out, or a penalty, you flip it out of the arena, something happens.
Yeah.
So that's kind of bogus. It's in the game, but it's kind of bogus. That should be like a gentleman's agreement. Like, don't do that.
You
But
can score a goal like after the whistle or something like that. It was
something. Yeah, there's something with that. But I mean, if I ever did that and it was like, it would be on accident, and if someone didn't get a goal and they should have, or they did get a goal, or like if I got a goal that was cheap, I'll just let them know, hey, I'm going to give you a goal.
Yeah.
And let them make the decision. If they say no, then hey, I gave you the decision. I have no problem with it. I'm going to give you a goal. But if you say, okay, thanks, that's totally fine by me. Like if there's something just totally bogus, I don't want to win because of that. So let's even it up. I took this weird goal. You can have, a free goal just to balance it.
What do you do in a goalie lock situation? Like when it's the Genesis version, when somebody's in the goalie lock, either yourself or what's the code for that you play by?
So I've only noticed my opponent doing it a couple times, and I try to flip the puck out of the ice, but sometimes it doesn't go. So I'm just like, I think I just finally just like get checked, and then the guy takes over, and then he circles back down or gives me back the puck. But a lot of guys are really good in Sega where they notice that I have the goalie lock, and they'll flip it over the ice. So a lot of the veterans, and I really appreciate that. But sometimes everything's happening so fast, you're not paying attention to what the goalie's doing. You're just seeing three guys coming after your play, and you're trying to skate around them. So, if they don't do that, I don't blame them. But if they can clearly see, like there's a one-on-one or something, or, I'm clearly goalie locked.
Yeah.
I hope they do the right thing, but if they don't, I don't blame them either, because that just gets me more determined. Fine, you did that. Okay, I'm going to score 3 goals in you now instead of 1.
What's your favorite difference between the Genesis version and the SNES version? Like, what do you prefer on the Genesis, on the SNES side of things versus the Genesis?
So SNES, I like the music better. And I just like that you could pick it up and play. I feel like it's the arcade version of the two. I think some people say it's chess and checkers. So checkers meaning Super Nintendo, and then chess because you need to know player weights and the poke check and all that jazz, all the crash crease like slapper, things like that in Sega. There's a lot of those kind of cheese type goals, but like pass shots, that drives me nuts. To get a pass shot through the goalie's 5-hole from the other end, like that's stupid. I'm sorry. It's in the game, yes, you can do it, but
in the game.
It does bother me sometimes when people are pass shooting. But sometimes, like if I'm desperate and there's 30 seconds left of the game and down by 1, I'll win. I'll try to win a face off and just pass shoot it at the net. But I'm not doing it the whole game. Like there are some players out there like they'll finish the game with 3 shots on goal because the whole game they were pass shooting.
I'm surprised you didn't mention the one button for taking control of the goalie.
Yes.
Or the LNR for picking the defenseman.
Both of those. Yeah. Maybe I'm just tired after a long week, but yeah, definitely those two. It's very nice. I always forget when I bounce between the two, but I've been playing CDL, Chaos Draft League, recently, and I'm pressing B, and it's like it's going to like say the puck's like in front of the slot in front of the goalie. All of a sudden I hit B and it's like the guy at the blue line and the puck's
it's always a crapshoot. It's just brutal.
And I don't know if it's specific to this particular league, but for some reason, and it's not just my team, I've seen it in all the games, there'll be 4 guys just staring at the puck. And like both teams are trying to hit B to like get to that near player, and then nothing's happening, and the puck's just slowly moving. And there's guys on both teams just like they're doing circles like away from it, and I'm like, oh man, Chaos has to dissect this one.
Any redeeming qualities in the Genesis version that you prefer that compared to the SNES?
Yeah. So I love the fluidity. The frame rate is a lot better. I will, I'll defend that.
Is that, I mean, it's better, but like, is it something that you could notice and it makes like
the skating is a lot smoother. The skating is a lot smoother in Sega. And the music is it's not a huge difference. I just prefer the Super Nintendo with the organ music. But Sega, I mean, it's a pain in the ass with the manual goalie button. You can hold it for like 1.2 or 4 seconds, whatever it is. I know Smoz, he calculated that, but there are hacks like the Chaos Draft League. He you could roam a little bit more with the goalie, and it's like half the amount of time holding the B button. It's not that big of a deal. Like if it was, nobody would be playing it, right? So it's like it's not that big of a deal, but I do like having the L and R for the proper defenseman in Super Nintendo. So that's great. Unfortunately, Sega doesn't have that. But
you ever get to play 2v2 on either system?
Not for a few years. I told Gamby, who does a lot of Super Nintendo 2-on-2, that I would be more available this year, and he actually found 3 guys last night. But I had a rare date night with my wife last night for makeup for my birthday. That was Wednesday. So I wasn't available. Thank you. I wasn't available last night, but like hopefully soon I could be that 4th guy, because I love playing 2-on-2. It's a lot of fun. You just kind of shoot the breeze with everybody, and you have your little. I think we usually use the Discord voice channel, and we're just like it's like basically 4 buddies hanging around a couch back in the day. You know what I mean? So,
yeah. The only thing you can't do is punch the guy beside you.
Yeah.
Is that your favorite ROM?
The 2v2. I just like the regular like classic ROM for both. I do like some things in CDL, like the goalie can come out a little bit, and the 1-minute penalties, and the quicker manual goalie reaction time. Although I will say a couple times in CDL this year, I think I've been hitting B too much and not like letting off like the spring of the B button.
Yeah.
And then it all of a sudden grabs my goalie, and I'm thinking I'm controlling a defenseman, and my goalie goes flying to the left, and it's a wide open net, and then the person scores.
You got to do that against me a few times, please. I need some free cheap goals. In the SNES side, 3 versus 3 pond hockey. You're familiar with that, right?
I made that.
So tell me about that.
So it just popped in my head. I was just thinking, I'm like, oh, we have the 2-on-2, and I'm like, I thought I saw something. I don't know if it was the Sega side years ago, but I was like, I wonder if I could just, sort of do like a fudge hack, like just a really like hillbilly hack of basically making everybody a forward, regardless if they're a forward or defenseman, and just do 3-on-3. So you have the 2 wingers in the center, and just doing that. And then you didn't have the L and R buttons because there are no defensemen, right? So it just, I think some people hated it, like absolutely hated it, and some people like loved it. I feel like there was almost no in between. I loved it because it was more challenging. You didn't have those defensemen to rely on, so you were always trying to play as a better 2-way forward, and not allowing breakaways. You're always getting a skater, a forward back there, so your goalie's not left hanging. It's very easy to deke out a goalie in Super Nintendo, but there are some like fantastic goalies. Like Bob Kay is a great goalie, manual goalie guy. A bunch of the guys, really like the top 5 to 8 guys, they're like tremendous manual goalie guys.
Is there a team that excels in the 3 versus 3 pond hockey league that really doesn't in the classic ROM?
I'm trying to think. there was a couple teams that were pretty good that have kind of
Like, would
shitty
Anaheim
defenses.
be slightly better because Kasatonov, Semenov, and I don't know who the heck. I mean,
Yeah, they would be a little bit better. One I was thinking of was the Whalers, because you have ZZ up there.
Zalapsky.
You have Zalapsky up there, whether he's a centerman or a winger,
Yeah.
and then having
I
Verbeek
know.
and Jeff Sanderson or something up there.
It's that
Um,
third player is like meh. That's the problem. Sanderson, like,
yeah,
he's just
he's basic, but there are some teams I can't think of any at the top of my head. I think Chicago gets better having Chelios up there.
But they're already a pretty good team to begin with, right?
They are, yeah, that's true. So
I'm just
Quebec,
figuring like a
Quebec's
team that
pretty
just
good.
got elevated. Quebec, Duchesne, would you bring up there?
No, they have too many forwards. So Sakic, Sundin, and then really choose your pick.
Nolan, maybe.
Kaminsky, Richie, Nolan. Richie
Yeah.
kind of sucks, like with and I think some of the guys have said it before. Like you need a minimum of 4 stick handling in Super Nintendo, otherwise they're kicking pucks.
Huh. And you've done a few other ROMs too. I mean, what's your? I guess 3 versus 3 pawn hockey is your favorite one. The Dynasty one is your favorite one. Like, which one stands out for you?
The all-time rosters. I spent so much time on that, almost a year, just researching.
Talk about that.
So I came across the forums and I'm like, how is there not like a best of like the greatest players of all time all in one ROM from each franchise? And there just wasn't. So I'm like, okay, this is going to be a huge undertaking, but I'm going to start doing my research, and I just
And
made
this was for the
great.
SNES.
Yes.
Okay.
I made one, and it's a very rough draft for Sega, and I keep telling myself I need to finish it and like clean it up because that would be awesome. And I know a lot of Sega guys would appreciate it. But there is one out there for Sega I released 2 or 3 years ago, basically just using the same attributes as I had for the Super Nintendo one. But I think it was 30 teams. I think it was 30 teams. I don't know if I want to do the 32 team ROM, but I'm like trying to learn the tools, and I keep learning, and then I get busy with work or home life, and then I forget because I don't hack a lot of like Sega ROMs that often. So I'm always like forgetting and have to relearn it again. So I'm hoping this fall when work dies down a little bit, I can spend some time on that, and really clean that up. But yeah, so I was just researching. I made a spreadsheet of like how many individual trophies everyone had. I tried to compare people in their eras.
Yes, that's a challenge. That's quite a challenge.
So I think there's a guy, Newsy Lalonde, I think is his name. He was like an old Montreal Canadian guys in the 20s or something. He was like the first like superstar in the NHL. So like guys like that, obviously, I mean, a fourth line bum today could outskate him and outplay him, of course, right? But you don't compare that way. You just compare in their like era.
Yeah.
So
against their peers at that time, how they compared and how they excelled.
Yeah. So a lot of guys, when I was, I was asking for input from both Sega and Super Nintendo communities, and a lot of guys gave me some good like advice and things. But a lot of people, or some people, had issues with, oh, this person, like, oh, they're, you only gave them a 4-speed or 5-speed. It's like, well, I'm comparing them to people like Mike Gartner, right? Like fast guys.
Yeah.
So it's like, yeah, they were fast, but they weren't like
Paul
some
Coffey
of the
fast.
fastest. Right, exactly. So it's like you had to compare, like, yes, they're fast, but it's also these are all of the best players of all time. So it's like some fast guys that were kind of fast in real life might have a 4-speed or maybe even a 5-speed. Not everyone's going to have a 6. I didn't want to juice the ROM. I didn't want everybody to have 6s.
Mm-hmm.
I think the top 3 guys were, or top 5, I think, were Bobby Orr, of course, Gordie Howe, Gretzky, Lemieux, and I think Bork and Lindstrom are right there. Those were my top. I think those are the top players of all time. Then Guy Lafleur is like right there. Jeffrin, like all those guys, they're like right there. But it's so hard with all of those guys in different eras to try to rank them. So I just did my best, and over the years I've tweaked it, fine-tuned it, and every year I take, this year's trophy winners, the Hart, the Lindsay, I added to my spreadsheet. So Connor McDavid, Austin Matthews, Kucherov, those guys get a little bit better every year. And then my thing was I had a criteria where a guy had to play at least 3+ years, like 3 or more years for a franchise, for a specific team in order to be eligible to be on that team. And so there's some fan favorites, like guys like Terry O'Reilly. I had him on early versions, but he was like one of the shittiest skaters of all time. And he was
So
a
what did
great
you do with
player.
Espo?
Espo's
Because
there.
he was not like the best of skaters, but he put in so many goals because he was able to run the crease. So how did you deal with him?
So I don't know if he has a 4-speed or even a 3-speed, but he's got, I don't know if it's a 5.5 or 5.6 shot, like power and accuracy, because he just scored so many goals, And I would also look at like shot accuracy on hockeyreference.com.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that I did that EA Sports didn't really do is defensemen they historically have low percentage because they're just dumping pucks on the net, right?
Yeah.
But like I know players like Coffey and Bork and like Lidstrom and some other offensive guys, I would give them a little bit more accuracy because, if they were truly trying to score, they would, if they were forward, they would be scoring like Cale Makar. I think I gave him pretty high accuracy because he's just like a freak. He kind of reminds me of like a Bobby or a Paul Coffey. He's phenomenal to watch. But all these young kids, once they're 3 years in the league, like when Austin Matthews, Connor McDavid started coming up, all these guys like Cale Makar, I don't think they were in early versions because they hadn't really made an impact quite yet. But now they have. So it's like I got to bump someone else out. Out of the Edmonton Oilers dynasty. All right, Connor McDavid's definitely going in, but like, who am I taking out? And
Glenn Anderson, you're taking a step out, or
it might have been like Ryan Smith, so like a fan favorite, but is he one of the all-time Edmonton Oilers? Like, the fans love them, but is he just going to ride the bench and not be a playable, player in NHL?
They're tough decisions to make. Yeah.
And then I also was just going to have one skater. Like a player only appear in one franchise, but then a couple guys like I think Clockwise was one of the guys. He's like, well, why? And Bob K, he's like, why can't you just have them on different teams? I'm like, so it's like
Thornton,
chaos. Which one? Joe Thornton?
Joe Thornton, would he be on both the Bruins and the Sharks, given that he played enough years for each of the two?
I think I love Joe Thornton, but I think I just left him on the Sharks. There were just too many Bruins. Like there was Dick Clapper, Milt Schmidt, and then the Bobby Orr, Espo days, Busick, all those guys. And then you had the Oates, Neely, Bork, and then, Bergeron, Krejci. I think Pasta has recently made the cut. But yeah, so I don't think Thornton made the cut for the Bruins. I think he was borderline. Sorry,
so Blaine Locker didn't make it, did he?
No, R.I.P. He just passed away a few months ago.
Did he really?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Oh, then Ray Croft didn't make it, and I'm trying to think of some other.
He won Rookie of the Year. He won the Calder, I think. But yeah, just there were the original 6 plus like Flyers and Penguins and the Blues. Like they just had too many guys. Like I had to knock off. I think the Canadians and the Maple Leafs. I had to leave Hall of Famers off because they're like everyone else was a Hall of Famer.
Yeah,
and a lot of these guys, and a lot of these guys I've never watched. So I'm like reading articles and like, how was Dave Keon as a skater, as a shooter from the Toronto? Like I never watched him, right? It was way before my time. So it's like I had to do a lot of this research, and it took like almost a year. And I've just got notes, and it was just so like I have all these notes, and then I would kind of release like the attribute list and have people pick it apart. But then they pick it apart, and I'm like, that was such a bad idea. Because it's like I put all this work in, and it's like, oh, you should make this guy a 5 and this guy a 6, and it's like, well, why? They're like, I don't know.
Don't take it to heart, like
no, and that's the thing. I need to like break that in my own mind. Like, don't take it to heart.
Yeah, well, good for you for doing that, because that, as you mentioned, that's a lot of effort, a lot of research, and tweaking the ROM too to make it so that you like it.
That work's done. So as long as I can figure out how to do the Sega stuff and through nose again. like that the attribute, the hard part's done. Now just kind of converting that into the Sega ROM.
So you're going to be going to King of 94 this year in
Yes.
Toronto. So
First time a rookie.
So any predictions on where you're going to be finishing?
I'm going to be the king of 94 on both consoles. I'm just kidding. I'm going to have fun and meet a lot of guys I've talked to for the last like 4.5 years.
Yeah. You know what? I'll be there, so I'll get to meet you in person. So, you know what? We're closing in on an hour, so I guess it's a good time to transition to the rapid fire questions, where I just throw you some questions. I want to hear some of your answers.
Sure.
Yeah. Do goalies mean anything in SNES?
I tend to think slightly. I know there's the weight. I know Dangler talks about it a lot. The weight, if it's a smaller guy, he can move left and right a little faster. We don't know anything about ramming goalies. It's not like Sega where, I don't know if it's puck control or something like that, but some guys just tend to, like Kelly Hirudi, he like lets a lot of softies in, things like that. But I think they do matter. I usually go for like Super Nintendo Draft League. I usually grab someone with like high glove, like a Bill Ranford or something like that. Someone that's not the top dog, but kind of, he lacks in some other things. But I like the glove and stick attributes more than agility, speed, puck control, all that defensive awareness. I don't know. I've had like Belfour before. He's pretty good, but I don't know. My guy is just Bill Ranford. Like I've had Barrasso. I had who's the Jets guy? Oh, Bob Essensa, goalie Bob. He's the goalie coach for the Bruins. But I had him, Newman and Housley one year for the Super Nintendo Draft League. Didn't even mean to. It's like I had that little back triangle down there.
Right.
And that was like one of my worst. I think that was my worst goals against average in the Super Nintendo Draft League.
Never again will you do that, I guess.
No,
break up that the trio.
Yeah.
Worst defeat you experienced in either system, I don't care.
Gamby. It was the Super Nintendo Draft League of, was it last summer? I think it was last summer. I was feeling good. I was having a great season. And for some reason, he kept beating me in overtime. Like he would win off the faceoff and just do a little like jiggle and then score right off the faceoff in overtime. And I love Gamby. He's a great guy. But like you look at the stats and it's like, I think I even like pulled it up. It was like, it was wild. I outshot him game 7, 20-10. And I had 7.5 minutes of attack zone and he won. There was 3 overtime games and he won all of them, including games 6 and 7. So I had 2 chances to close out the series. So that one hurt because I was like feeling good. I'm like, I think I can make it to the final because I think that was the semis. And, it was on the stream. So everyone was like, oh my God, what an upset, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, and I was frustrated, but I obviously said good game. And I'm like, best of luck. Like, I'm looking forward to playing you again sometime in the future. But then the next season, someone else took him out. But I went and I won the whole thing with Klima. I was pissed off. I had to win. I had to redeem myself.
Redemption. Favorite league to play in?
SDL, Super Nintendo League, Draft League, and then probably CDL on the Sega side. Because I just love the drafting. Playing is cool too, but I just love like that fantasy draft.
In the Genesis version, who's better, Roy or Belfour?
Probably Roy.
Most underrated team in Genesis?
Underrated? If you asked me before Superliga, I would say Quebec. But man, they
sorry about that.
They drove me bananas. They just drove me bananas. Like Duchesne and Gusarov was just always in the box. There were like most games, I'd be down to 4 guys or even 3 guys for the majority of the game. It was such a pain in the ass. Otherwise, I would say maybe Philly.
Oh,
I like Recchi. I like who's that other guy they have there?
Eklund.
Pelle Eklund. Yes, I actually like him in both systems, like both consoles. But Recchi's really nice. He can snipe. And then
do you play Lindros?
Not really. I think I I think I throw Brindamore over there or something. But with Reki, Super Nintendo, we're all like, as a community, I feel like a lot of the guys, including myself, are getting better at slap shots. So like I'll come down, right? And then I'll kind of cross like kind of like an S, and I just aim for the far post. So it's like I'm coming down and I aim like down that way. I'm giving my secrets away, but I mean you can clearly see it when you play me. And Coke is another guy that's been doing it. I think Anatar. But we started seeing with the Gretzky's out, at the top of the face-off circle and sniping. It's like, what? It was just so strange. So I'm like, okay. So I've seen like a lot of guys with like 5-5 or 4-5 shots, like Klima, Sandstrom, guys like that, JR, Cicerelli, all those guys. They can almost consistently, find that corner. It might hit the post or the crossbar, but they're like right there. They're beating the goalie a lot of the times.
So on SNES, what would you rather have? 10 slappers or 3 one-timers?
3 one-timers.
What's your greatest victory, either system?
Probably, was it spring? I don't know if it was this past spring or fall of last year. I won Super Nintendo B West, and then I substituted in East because some guy dropped out. I was like, yeah, I'll play. And they were both B, and then I won East. I won West, I think, with Chicago, or maybe it was Boston, and then the East was Boston. Or one was Boston, one was Chicago. I don't remember. But like winning both, that was pretty cool. And I think it's still on the border, like in the top of the NHL 94 online website. Because Chaos usually doesn't change it until like the start of like the next season.
Yeah, I just learned that recently. Hardest player, I'm talking about a human being, to play against.
I know for Sega it's probably AJ. He's just incredibly patient with the puck, and I've learned a lot from him on both consoles. But it's nice to get some more wins than losses in Super Nintendo with them. I'm not saying I beat him more in that. It's just like
You have a fighting chance.
I'm a fighting chance. I'm narrowing the gap more in Super Nintendo. But I would say Super Nintendo would probably be Professor. I know Bob K checks a lot. He loves it. He's a very nice guy, but he's a hateful guy in the game. But Professor just has these crazy corner slap shots, like one-timers. I'm like, how the hell did that go in? It's just like, I don't know what he does. It's phenomenal. And a lot of those guys, Coke, Anatar, all those guys.
What's your dream matchup if you have to play 2-on-2? Who do you want to have as your teammate?
Ooh, for either
pick a system. I don't care.
Yeah, honestly, it doesn't really matter. I would take probably AJ. He kind of just follow his lead. He knows what he's doing. Definitely for Sega. For Super Nintendo, I would take him, or I would even take, I don't know, maybe I would take Dangler.
Do you prefer or do you like the weight bug in a Genesis, or you hate it?
I hate it. I'm used to it at this point, but like I've always said, like I should run a league with the weight bug, and some people get excited, and then all the chirpers like, wah, wah, no, it's not part of the game. It's like, well, they're like, oh, if you want to do that, just play Super Nintendo. I'm like, I do that.
Okay, most underrated team in the SNES.
Most underrated, I would say LA. Now they're at the top, like towards the top, but for some reason, Classic, they drop to like the 6th or 7th or 8th pick sometimes, and it's like, I don't know why, because I think they're right up.
Power.
I would say my top 3 teams in Super Nintendo are Boston, LA, and then Boston, LA, Pittsburgh, and Detroit. I would say so top 4. Because Detroit is fun, but they're light. They're very light. You really just have coffee. That's your only big guy.
All right, so pretty much it. But I do have one final question I'm going to ask you. If you could improve something in NHL 94 just to make it better, what would you do? What would you improve?
I figured you were going to ask me this question. When I first came to the community, just like a lot of the guys and some of the existing guys roll their eyes when this is asked, can you add fighting to the game? But over the years, I've changed my stance on that. I was thinking like maybe a season mode, something like that. But honestly, I think create and trade player like that option. I think they introduced it in 95, being
Mhm.
able to create your play and trade players. I think that would have been, cool. Like I would put that over season mode. I think just having the different, um, you know, players on the different teams. Like, oh, because I grew up Bruins and Red Wings fan, so I would have loved to have like Ray Bork and like Lidstrom or Bork and Coffee on the Red Wings. That would have been cool.
But how cool would it be if there was fighting in the game? You could
It would be cool.
it opens up a new dynamic where you could play goons
Yeah.
that have like a prober type player. Because
Mhm.
could you imagine if you have him out there and he sucks in one of the opposing better players into a fight, and they both go into
Yeah.
the box for a 5-minute major?
Yeah.
He basically took out so it just, I don't know, man. It'd be so cool to see that. It may be too big a hill to climb to
So
include it in the game.
I kind of changed my stance with that NHL 93 league because Neely, I had Boston for one of my teams, and Neely just kept going in the box. And he was
Yeah,
like my center. I needed him to score, and he was always in the box for 5 minutes.
yeah,
So, like, for a whole period, because we fight 5-minute periods.
yeah.
So it just became a pain in the ass. And it just kept stopping the flow of the game. So if like I was on a good streak
Ah,
and all of a sudden that happens, it's like, all right, now I got to fight. Okay, watch him go to the box. Okay, and then it's basically taking like a timeout, and like a real timeout, like a TV timeout. And finally, I'm like, okay, well, I lost all my momentum. So it
and
just,
if you lose the fight, you could potentially be lost for the game, right?
yeah, I think so. I know definitely 92, and I think 93 was the same.
And 92, I don't think they had that feature where it's the game. Like there's
Oh, okay,
injuries. It was just
okay.
basically 5 minutes and sometimes an instigator. But
I think 92 you
anyways,
can fight every time you like checked after the whistle or something like that.
yeah,
And then 93 was limited to like one or
certain
two,
times.
maybe three fights or something. Yes, maybe certain times. I don't remember.
Yeah, it's like the first 5 minutes or something. I can't remember specifically
Yeah,
what
I
it
don't
is. You
remember.
can't or couldn't. Like, I don't know, whatever. But yeah, man. Any final thoughts? Anything else you want? Like last words? Anything before we sign off?
Yeah, I just want to say appreciate what you're doing. This is like awesome. A lot of us, both sides, Super Nintendo, Sega, love what you're doing. Loving the exposure, getting to sort of meet some of these people ahead of King of 94 virtually, just kind of seeing everyone's childhood, like, how they came to NHL 94 or whatever game it was. So it's really cool hearing all these stories, and then everyone's sort of expertise, like McMarcus doing the ROM hack, Chaos, Smoz doing more technical stuff,
Mhm.
and then other players, like top players, Bob K, Professor giving you those lines, and then AJ giving you the lines on the other side. It's really cool. You're just bringing it from all certain elements, and then talking to some of the ROM hackers with, such as myself, and some others, where do the all-time rosters 3-on-3, I'm always open to feedback too. So if you have ideas for ROMs, this is just my creativity. It's not that great these days,
Right.
but compared to my childhood. But like, if someone has something, like, I'm always willing to at least explore it.
That's fair. No, it's a pleasure to do these and meet people virtually, and
Hmm.
soon we'll be able to meet them in person at
Yep.
King of 94. But yeah, I mean, like I'm happy to do this, and it's a lot of fun, and there's lots more to do. And I've been giving a lot of love to SNES lately and it's not by design; it's just circumstance more than anything else. But yeah, so let's try to get the SNES side some more exposure and drag some new people
They're
into it.
both fun
I want to
games. They're both
they
fun.
they definitely are. And you know what? I'm trying my level best. I keep saying it. I want to keep playing more SNES exhibition matches, but nobody's biting. Anyways, with that being said, I think it's a good time to end this. Kids Wasted, I want to appreciate you coming on. This has been a solid hour talking about 94 and other things. So yeah, with that, keep your controller plugged in, your stick on the ice.